So one last hey from guys as we start on the horn here. Gentlemen, have a great night. What's up, guys? Yeah, you can do the intro for me. No, you have to go back.
I love On the Horn with Zach Joachim. Tune in.
What's up, guys? This is On the Horn. I'm Zach Joachim. Phil Martelli opened the press conference by talking about our two dear student journalists there, who were dressed in suits and to the nines and totally outdid me tonight on an evening that VCU beat St. Peter's 78-61 at the Siegel Center, in a game that was, I think, atmosphere-wise, like relatively subdued until about 13 minutes to go in the second half. And we're gonna have to start there because that's how I led this game. It was the story of this game. Barry Evans and one down here on this side of the floor. Everyone in the arena on the VCU bench thought it was an and one. I saw the replay, right here on the screen because Sean Robertson and Ed Nixon sit next to me when they're broadcasting the game. And the defender was like flying through the air. I have no idea. I mean, we've all seen some bad block charge calls. It's a subjective call. That is one of the worst ones I've ever seen. And that ignited this game because it would have put VCU up by 19, I think 55-36, with Barry Evans headed to the free throw line trying to make it a 20-point lead. Phil Martelli got teed up arguing the call. This arena, which had been, like I said, like somewhat quiet. I mean, it's a Wednesday night against St. Peter's. Like, it was the atmosphere that you would expect. No offense to St. Peter's, which made an Elite Eight run a few years ago. Last time they were in this arena, but it was not a fiery atmosphere. And then all of a sudden, VCU got rattled by that sequence. Terrence Hill, Tyrell Ward, Zach Joachim talked about it in the postgame. They had that conversation after the game about we got to do better about keeping our composure there. And Phil said, that starts with me because he got teed up arguing it. But all of a sudden, the atmosphere drastically shifted in here. Everyone was into this game. It got fiery. It got chippy. And the officiating was both ways, too. And look, I am a big be nice to refs person. I am, because I've done stories at the high school level across multiple sports. We don't have enough officials these days, and a big part of that is because of the ridicule that they get. And so be nice to refs. Generally, I always try and be nice to refs, but I crashed out a little bit on Twitter because that second half was egregious, and it was not just that call. There was it was both ways too. I mean, St. Peter's was upset about it. There was an over and back down here that got called that was not an over and back at all. It was in St. Peter's end of the floor, and they called that an inadvertent whistle. Tyrell Ward got teed up arguing a call. Both teams were in the double bonus with 8:22 to play, which meant that I was screwed on the print deadline, which is supposed to be 9:15. But I will say, the calls aside, it turned what was, a pretty run-of-the-mill atmosphere into this place was on fire. And all of a sudden, this game was fun, and the tension got turned from about a 3 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 in this arena. And it got kind of fun, and VCU ended up winning by 17 against the St. Peter's team. I think the line was VCU minus 21.5, so St. Peter's covered, but not by a whole lot. VCU led for 35-29. There were 4 lead changes only early on, and it never really got into serious jeopardy in that second half. I think it got down to 9, VCU's lead did, and that was the closest that it got. St. Peter's hung around thanks to Brent Bland, senior guard, who I didn't know this. I should have included this in the story earlier this week. Adam Epstein pointed it out to me. He is the only member of St. Peter's that was on that Elite Eight team. I think he was a freshman who didn't play at all when the Peacocks made that magic run to the Elite Eight, first number 15 seed to ever reach that point in the NCAA tournament under Shaheen Holloway a few years ago. And they lost to VCU 57-54 in the Siegel Center. Mike Rhodes' VCU that year. This is the first time they'd come back since then. And VCU scheduled this game, Phil Martelli talked about it this week, because that is a physical St. Peter's team that plays a zone and wants to play at a slow tempo. They're in the 300s in terms of adjusted tempo nationally. I've said this a million times, I'll say it again, VCU is 7th nationally, and they play at a very fast pace. We all expected that under Phil Martelli. That's how his Bryant teams played. They're fun to watch, and VCU wanted to see a style that contrasted their own, and to give them, a look at a unique defense that was going to try and force them to play to a style that wasn't theirs. I don't think St. Peter's really succeeded in that. I mean, VCU 22 of 49 from the field. That's 44.9%, 8 of 22 from 3, 36.4%. Those aren't the possession numbers that they had in like the Wagner game, when they put up 103. when they really played at the pace that Martelli wants them to. And it was also slower than the Utah State game. But VCU was, I think, at the end of the day, I don't want to say comfortably in control because it didn't feel comfortable in that second half with how this atmosphere got, but it never really looked like St. Peter's was going to win this game, right? Bland was the only reason. He was 8 of 16 from the field, 5 of 10 from 3. Like I said, 25 points. He was phenomenal. Huge tip of the cap to him because he balled out, and he kept the Peacocks in this game. But VCU's, again, their depth wore St. Peter's down. VCU 36 to 18 edge and bench points. 5 guys in double figures, led by Tyrell Ward, who was 5 of 11 from the floor with 15 points, 18 over on the plus-minus. Man, we talked about it in the post-game press conference. Tyrell Ward didn't play at LSU last year, and it was 500-plus days since he'd played a college basketball game when he took the floor for the first time against Utah State. After missing the Wagner game, and I asked Phil about that in the post-game press conference. Phil, by the way, who is one of my favorite human beings I've ever got a chance to cover. I think he told me good luck in the marathon about 5-6 times today. So he's awesome. And he talked about, like, in July, Tyrell was struggling a little bit, right? Because you'd sat out for so long. But in these first couple games in the season, I think he had 11 against Utah State, right? And then 15, he leads them in scoring tonight. He doesn't look like a guy who hadn't played a college basketball game in 2 years to me. He's back up and running. Terrence Hill Jr., 13 points, 4 of 5 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. He is shooting with so much confidence right now, and we saw flashes of the offensive skill set last year. It seems like this style under Phil Martelli suits him a lot better than Ryan Odom's did. Rams are obviously playing a lot faster. Terrence looks like he's playing and shooting the ball with so much confidence out there. Adam Epstein, a really good observation. He leaned over to me during this game and said, look how much lift Terrence Hill is getting on that jump shot. He is really getting off the floor. Looks like he made a bit of an adjustment to his shooting form to get more lift because he obviously doesn't have a whole lot of height. And so he's generally easy to contest on paper, but he's more difficult to contest this year because he's getting a bunch of lift on that jump shot, and he was 3 of 4 from 3. And that jump shot looks phenomenal. Jadrian Tracy, Barry Evans, Lazar Djokovic, all with 11 points apiece. Lazar Djokovic, 4 blocks. His rim protection was enormous tonight. He's healthy. Not 100%. He's still fighting the turned ankle that he sprained against Utah State, but thankfully it was not a major sprain. He obviously came back into that game. Lazar said that Jay Wall, VCU's acclaimed trainer who's awesome, did some work on it and got him back up and running this week. He played 30 minutes and 19 seconds, which is a team high. And so I thought his minutes might be limited tonight. They were not at all. At this point, guys, I don't know why Keyshawn Mitchell's not playing. I asked Phil about it this week. We didn't get to it in the post-game press conference today. He said against Utah State it was kind of matchup dependent, but Keyshawn only played a few minutes in that Wagner game, and he hasn't seen the floor in these last couple of games. Phil obviously likes Christian Furman's experience, but Firm only played 6:52 tonight. They are relying heavily on Lazar Djokovic, and I certainly didn't think, and I don't think most VCU fans envisioned the rotation in that 5 spot to be as one-sided as it is early in the season. But Lazar Djokovic is obviously the guy at the 5 spot for this team, and Firm is the backup, and Keyshawn's not playing. We'll see if that changes to a degree over the course of the season, but Lazar Djokovic so important to this VCU team right now. And Barry Evans, 11 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. He turned the ball over 5 times, but he also had 2 steals, and he's 16 over on the plus-minus. I thought that second half, he started the season kind of slow relative to my expectations. I thought he was going to be, one of the leading figures on this VCU team, and he could still very much be that. But I think Barry would probably be the first to tell you, like, the Wagner and Utah State contributions aren't quite, he's not playing up to his potential and what he did with Bryant last year. I think that block charge sequence ignited a little something in him, because I thought that second half was his best in a VCU uniform by far. He was 5 of 7 from the floor. He's been great on the glass over the course of the year. That has been his key contribution. Like I said, 8 rebounds. That's a team high. Tracy's been a steady presence for this team this year. I think his experience, his veteran savvy, his communication, his leadership really shines for this group. He's 11 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers. VCU turned the ball over 17 times. That's the glaring negative from tonight, right? It's a physical St. Peter's team. Only got 15 points off of those turnovers. So, St. Peter's 14 turnovers, VCU 17, but the Rams turned that into 8 points. The Peacocks turned that into 15 points. VCU 39-37 edge in the rebounding battle. St. Peter's did have 17 offensive rebounds and 14 second chance points, so that's something they'll want to clean up. So it wasn't pretty for stretches, but I think at the end of the day, a 17-point win and what became a pretty fun atmosphere here in the second half, albeit perhaps for the wrong reasons. Rams are 2-1, and you have a huge opportunity on Monday against NC State. I'll write about the Will Wade Bowl in the coming days here, which is going to be awesome. I know there's a lot of anticipation for that one. Obviously, especially after the Utah State loss, when VCU tied that game late, people are chomping at the bit to see this team capitalize on one of those non-conference opportunities and get a hang your hat on it win, and they got every chance to do that in Raleigh on Monday. So I'm Zach Joachim. This is On the Horn. I got the quick recap online now with the live updates and the full play-by-play from the game, and I'll get takeaways for this one posted tomorrow to go in the paper on Friday. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and following the coverage. I'll see you in Raleigh.